Chag Sameach, everyone.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Welcome to Temple Beth Emet in Anaheim's Seder for you to enjoy at your own pace. It's my pleasure to be joined by my dear friend and colleague, Cantor Zev Brooks. I am Rabbi Marcia Tilchin, and this is Scott Spitzer here for backup vocals and great entertainment.
And thank you for welcoming us into your home. See, I haven't had one drop of wine yet, and I'm already slurring.
Which means that tonight is going to be really fun. Anyway, this Seder that we're doing in advance of Passover is meant to be versatile. This experience will both allow you to fulfill all your obligations on the first night of Passover, which is a Friday night, which includes some Shabbos additions, and also Saturday night, which will include some Havdalah additions, as well as the counting of the Omer. And I'll just say that it's important to begin every Seder with sort of the mnemonic that we recall through melody that allows us to remember the order of the Seder, which means order. So I invite you to turn to, if you have Feast of Freedom, which is the Rabbinical Assembly's Haggadah, it's really very beautiful. We invite you to turn to page 22. Now, if you haven't yet done this on Erev Pesach, you can light your candles. And when you light your candles, you'll make the bracha for Shabbat and then Yom Tov. Okay, so you'll do Shabbat first and then Yom Tov. And on the second night, you need to wait until it's dark before you light your candles. So if you start your Seder in advance of complete sunset, you can light your candles through transferring fire after, maybe during Shulchan Aruch. All right, so here we go. What's your favorite melody for the order?
Well, I like to sing this melody. It goes like this. Kadesh orchatz karpas yachatz magid rachza motzi matzah marar karech shulchan orech tzafun barech alel nirtza.
Wow.
Short and sweet.
Did you write that?
No, I think I learned that melody when I was a student, a young boy at Solomon Schechter Day School in Philadelphia. And, they used to have a model Seder at the school, and I don't know who introduced it, but when you're a little boy, you don't ask those questions. You just kind of like sing along.
I love that. I want you to teach that to me. There's sort of the, what we call the trad melody. Kadesh orchatz karpas yachatz. But when Scott and I were when I was working in Nyack, New York, the rabbi who I worked with there had a wonderful tradition that I really loved. So another way to do the order, and we'll go back and forth between the three, is this one. Sing along if you know it. Kadesh urchatz karpas yachatz magid rochza motzi matzah maror korech shulchan orech tzafun barech halel nirtza.
Not bad.
And it kind of ends on that weird thing. And then what you do is you sing that all the way through. And one of the most sort of annoying things ever is when you're like, I can't sing anymore. So
But little kids would appreciate that melody, though.
For sure.
They would catch on. That would sound familiar to them. By the way, the nice thing about a Seder, it's one of the few times probably that you actually sing a table of contents.
Right? Yeah. Well, Kadesh, Cantor Brooks, our friend Zev, is going to lead us in the Friday night Passover Kiddush. It's in our home, it's customary that everybody stands when the Kiddush is being recited, so I invite you to rise. We are on page 24 in Feast of Freedom.
And what I like to do at my Seder is I sing this little preparatory melody called Hineni Muchan Umzuman. You can see it on the top of page 24. I sing it like this. Hineni muchan umzuman, hineni muchan umzuman, הנני מוכן ומזומן לקיים מצוות כוס ראשון, כמו שכתוב בתורה.
הנני מוכן ומזומן,
כמו שכתוב בתורה. הנני מוכן ומזומן. So on Friday night we begin like this. וירא ויבוא יום השישי, ויאכלו השמיים והארץ וכל צבאם. ויאכל אלוהים במשבי מלאכתו אשר עשה, וישפוט במשבי מקום מלאכתו אשר עשה. ויברך אלוהים את המשבי ויקדש אותו, כי בו שבת מקום מלאכתו אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות ספרי מרנן.
לחיים.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן.
אמן.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העם ורוממנו מכל לשון, וקדשנו במצוותיו. ותיתן לנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה, שבתות למנוחה, מועדים לשמחה, חגים וזמנים לששון. את יום השבת הזה ואת יום חג המצות הזה, זמן חירותנו באהבה, מגרע קודש זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים. בשבת מועדי קודשך באהבה ורצון, בשמחה וששון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני בקדש השבת וישראל והזמנים.
Amen.
And then we say this, page 26. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
Amen.
לחיים.
לחיים.
And now?
And now, you can fast forward over this if it's the first night. And here we go with the Kiddush for the second night of Passover.
We don't have a candle here, by the way, for Borei Morea H. We just don't have one here present.
You wouldn't even on the Seder. believe it or not. Okay. So, Hineni muchana umizumenet l'kayem mitzvat kos rishon, shehu keneged b'shorat hayeshua, she'amar hakadosh baruch hu liyisrael, v'hotzeti etchem mitachat sivlot Mitzrayim. Savri chaverai.
Chaim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol olam, v'romamanu mikol lashon, v'kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'titen lanu Adonai Eloheinu b'ahava, moadim l'simcha, chagim uzmanim l'sason, et yom chag hamatzot hazeh, zeman cherutenu mikra kodesh, zecher litziat Mitzrayim, kivanu v'charta v'yotanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, u'moadei kodshecha, b'simcha u'v'sason hinchaltanu, baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim.
Amen.
And we continue on page 26. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei meorei ha'esh. And whatever fire or light is going on in your house, you just sort of make that gesture. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamavdil ben kodesh lechol, ben or lechoshech, ben Yisrael amim, ben yom hashvi'i l'sheshet yemei ha'maseh, ben Kiddushat Shabbat, likdushat Yom Tov, hivdalta, v'et Yom HaShvi'i, misheshet Yemei HaMaseh, kidashta, hivdalta v'kidashta, et amcha Yisrael, bikdushatecha, baruch atah Adonai, hamavdil ben kodesh lekodesh.
Amen.
How about if you do Shehachianu for us?
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
L'chaim. Delicious.
It says here we're supposed to drink while reclining.
Oh, you're so right. Let me. Okay, you know what? Well put. I'm going. I'm
You know
leaning.
why?
I'm leaning to the left.
You know why?
Why, honey?
Rabbi Cantor? Because we're like royalty tonight.
Yes.
All of us are free.
Yes.
I just want to say hello there.
A lot of the customs of the Seder are patterned after a Greek banquet. And so that's one thing the ancient Greeks used to do. They used to lounge on these chaise lounges that you might remember or might see in movies about ancient Rome or ancient Greece. So we do the same thing. I'm going to give myself a little more wine while you...
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good for right now. So we are at the second part of the Seder, Urchatz. This is the mysterious first washing without a blessing. Yeah. And this prepares us for eating finger foods, but it's not akin to the sacred ritual washing that would be happening before we sat down to our formal meal, as the priest did in the temple. And also, of course, by having this washing with no bracha, it begs the question of, why are we doing this?
Why are we not saying a bracha?
There you go.
But why then even bother washing?
Because you're about to eat.
Oh. You mean like we need clean hands?
Yes, and I do
It's
think that
hygienic.
Yeah. Okay, so here we go. We're going to sing. Do you want to sing Twinkle, Twinkle? Let's try it.
Okay.
Kadesh Urchatz.
There it is.
So unsatisfying, though, don't you think? Okay. So,
Here, let me help you this. What I like to do at my home,
what do you do?
I will, here, let me have that, Scott.
Okay, next time it'll be my home. I gotcha. So this will be your home. And then.
So what we do here is I will want to grab some towels there, or let me grab some for you. So just like kind of mimicking the idea of being free and being at a banquet where you're sort of the guest of honor, you might have someone come and wash your hands for you. So that's what I'm going to do here. So, I'd sprinkle a little water.
Oh, so lovely.
Feels good too.
Yes.
So there's a little paper towel for you.
Thank you. And do I pour for Scott?
If you want, you're closer, but
Okay.
same idea. And then I'll come to Scott and he can pour for me.
That's it. Yeah. It feels so strange to do it with the becher like that and not to say the bracha.
Exactly. Thank you. All right. Perfect. You can set that down.
Oh, here you go. Sorry.
I got it. A little water never hurt anybody.
Correct.
So now we're all clean.
So we urchatz. By the way, I sat in on a fascinating lecture with, of all people, Rabbi Ethan Tucker, on the, no, was it Ethan? Might have been Ellie Confer, doesn't matter. But the original order of the Seder, there were several of them, and this is actually a very doctored one, much sort of later after the Talmudic age, the one we do now.
Oh.
And I'll tell you a little bit about that later. But it's time for the next thing. So how about if we do your melody up to the third one?
Sure. Kadesh Urchatz Karpas.
Again, almost equally unsatisfying.
It's almost like
Okay.
Name That Tune if you remember that show, right?
There you go. So would you like some karpas, my friend?
There you go. Ooh, this looks nice. And
I have some incredibly exciting news, by the way, after
Boy.
we karpas ourselves.
this is
Okay.
some good-looking karpas.
Yeah.
So take the green thing that you have on your table and get ready to dip it in the salt water
Of course, salt water representing tears.
that we cried when our ancestors were slaves in Egypt.
And and just so you know, we are on page 26 in the Feast of Freedom. Here we go. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri ha'adamah.
Amen.
Well, that's good.
Good salt water. Now,
Good
you know what I
parsley.
learned from Rabbi Jeff Hoffman? I'm sure I learned it from somebody else. Once you eat the karpas, you can eat any vegetable. So, whereas instead of starving until 11 p.m., which I've had to do in my life, most of my life, they put out, at his Seders, He put out a huge crudité with a bunch of dips.
Ah.
And like, we were happy during the whole Magid.
Right.
So I just want to say, if that's something you would like to do, there is nothing wrong with that.
Ergo, the celery right here.
Yes, I love it. So we have some celery. You can, and you don't have to dip it in salt water, or you can. Are we ready for yachatz?
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's do the old-fashioned one. Kadesh urchatz karpas yachatz.
That melody works a lot better when you're doing these like that incrementally,
For sure, it does. Okay, now let's talk about yachatz for a second. We're going to take the middle matzah and break it into two. So, Scott, have you ever thought about why 3 matzahs?
I have thought about that before.
And what thought you?
Well, 3 seems like a kind of a round number, right? But I don't know. I mean, now that you asked, I'm stumped a little bit.
See, 3 is such a big. Think about all the 3s in Judaism: God, Torah, Israel,
There you go.
creation, revelation, redemption.
Yeah.
Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov.
Hello, exactly.
Sarah, Rivka, Rachel.
No, that's 4. But I know what you were thinking.
Here's
Okay.
the middle one is.
Okay, here's number. Here, this is the top. We're not taking this one. We're taking
Another reason though?
this one.
Rabbi?
Yeah, well, I think. Yep. So the real question is, why are we breaking the middle one, and why is it that the big one gets hidden and the other one stays?
Yeah.
That's also another question. But I would say, if you look at the importance of creation, revelation, and redemption, let's just focus on that. If this is revelation, or actually it goes in the order of creation, we were redeemed before we had revelation or redemption, that, Scotty, why don't you break it?
You deserve to break it. You got the matzah tie, so.
Yeah, you got the matzah. Okay, oh man, which is the bigger half?
I'd say this is slightly bigger.
I'll go with that.
I'll go with that. Okay, so what you're going to need to do, Scott, is wrap it up and hide it, and Zev is going to have to find it.
Is he the youngest?
He might be. No, we don't want to know where it is.
Okay.
Well, in my house, what we used to do is when we used to have to wash our hands the second time in the Seder, we'd get up from the table to wash our hands, and then they would hide the Avikomen during that time.
Yes, that's right.
One thing Rabbi Tilchin was commenting on is, why do we have 3 matzahs? And did you want to make a comment about that? You asked Scott. And
Yes, well, so did you have something you wanted to say?
well,
There's an explanation in this one.
And also in this one too.
Unsatisfying to me.
Here's what I just want so that you know, count off. Some people count off Kohen, Levi, Yisrael. There's a lot of different. It says the top matzah is for the usual blessing over bread. So tonight, when we make motzi, we're going to make it over that guy. Okay, and actually, we should probably cover it up
So
again.
usually- and then on Shabbos you have 2.
Right.
But then
So the
tell
middle
me,
one is the weird one,
that's
right?
the one that
Right.
makes it.
The bottom matzah is for the Hillel sandwich, but the middle matzah is. I actually think the middle matzah is really for yet another question, like why are we washing without a blessing? Why are there 3 instead of 2?
right.
Okay.
Well, the middle matzah, some say, like Scott was alluding to, that matzah represents the special bracha you make on eating matzah. It's not just hamotzi for bread itself, but that we're instructed to eat matzah. So we have a matzah 1, matzah 2 for Shabbat or any festival, and that third matzah to have a unique matzah just for the blessing of eating matzah.
I'll just add one other thing, because you asked this question before and I knew I had an answer. There's a 3-fold interpretation of matzah. Matzah is the bread of affliction, matzah is the bread of freedom, and matzah represents our rapid escape, like just sort of the practicality of like we had to pick up and go quickly. And so maybe that's why there's 3 levels.
Lovely. Did you make that up?
Yes.
That's awesome. Okay, here we go. So it's time for the Magid. And by the way, don't you think, I just want to say it's unfair. Here's what's unfair. When we sing the order, You know, Magid is basically the Seder, and it doesn't get any, it doesn't, you don't even go Magid, right? You just say it.
Okay.
Unfair.
Well, it's like a table of contents. You might say chapter 7, it could be 500 pages, but it just says chapter 7.
Right. Okay, here we go. Kadesh Urchatz Karpas Yachatz Magid.
There we are.
So, okay, here we go. We are on page 30 of Feast of Freedom. If you happen to have, this is our favorite Haggadah, if you happen to have a different night, we are on, the Magid begins on page 12. And there's there's fun things, in fact, some plays and some interesting commentary. But now, first of all,
that you're in, you want to find the section that says Magid.
we begin with halachma anya. This is the bread of affliction. And of course, halachma anya is not Hebrew, it is Aramaic, which is so interesting.
Well, one of the reasons this is in Aramaic is because it invites people, they wanted the people to understand, just like we have now prayer books in Hebrew and English.
Right.
And a lot of people aren't familiar with Hebrew, so they can understand the prayer in English, same thing. So this is done in the vernacular of the time, because it was very important to emphasize at the Seder what matzah was. This is the bread of affliction, which our ancestors ate.
Beautifully said. Here we go. You ready? Halachma, halachma anya diachalu, avahatana, be'ara, be'ara demitzrayim, be'ara, be'ara demitzrayim, kol dichvin yete ve'yechol, kol ditzrich yete ve'yifsach, Hashatach lashana haba be'arad Yisrael. Hashatach avdei lashana haba b'nei chorin. Scotty, you want to read that in English for us?
This is the bread of affliction, which our ancestors ate in the land of Mitzrayim. All who are hungry, let them enter and eat. All who are in need, let them come celebrate Pesach. Now we are here next year in the land of Israel. Now we are enslaved. Next year we will be free.
Beautiful. And then there's a prayer that follows, that basically is asking God to sort of release all people who are captive in whatever generation we're doing the Seder, just as God did our ancestors in Egypt. So that's the setup. But you know, the Magid, the Magid began with this fabulous introduction that's almost like a prologue. But now it's time for the fear kashas. Now I know, there's one thing I know, I am not the youngest person at this table, but I'm not sure who is. So, and just because I'm so, can we share the Manishtana?
Absolutely.
Yes.
One interesting thing about the Manishtana is it's 4 questions. It's really designed to provoke thought and question, and it's the reason we learn through questions is, again, reflecting on the way that things were done in ancient Greece. If you think about the ancient schools of philosophy, they would pose a question in order to initiate a discussion. It kind of relates back to that as well.
Right? Absolutely.
I also think that it's part of being free. You know, when you're a slave, you just do what you're told.
You ain't asking like, why do I have to carry this over here?
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to start. This is how my mom taught me to do it. Already, I learned this when I was 3.
That's great.
Okay, here we go. We're on page 32. Manishtana halayla hazeh mikol halelot shebechol halelot anu ochlin chametz umatzah halayla hazeh kulo matzah. On all other nights, we either eat chametz or matzah. Why on this night do we eat only matzah? Who's next?
I'm going to do the next question. Here's the melody that we use at our home. It goes like this. Ma nishtana halayla hazeh, Ma nishtana halayla hazeh, mikol haleilot, shebechol haleilot, anu ochlin, she'ar ha'yiragot, halayla hazeh, maror, maror. On all other nights, we eat all kinds of vegetables. Why? On this night, lest me eat bitter herbs.
Nice.
Well, then I will pick up just the traditional Manishtana. Manishtana halayla zeh mikol halelot, mikol halelot, shebechol halelot ein anu mapilin afilu ba'am echad. Afilu ba'am echad. Help me out.
Halayla hazeh, shetei fe'amim. Halayla hazeh, shetei fe'amim. On all other nights, we do not usually dip vegetables even once. Why on this night do we dip twice?
Ma nishtana halayla hazeh, mikol haleilot, mikol haleilot,
Shebechol halelot, anu ochlin, ben yoshvinu vein mesubin, ben yoshvinu vein mesubin. Halayla hazeh, kulanu mesubin. Halayla hazeh, kulanu mesubin.
On all other nights we eat sitting upright or reclining. Why on this night do we eat reclining?
Excellent questions.
And here's the amazing thing. We aren't going to answer a darn one of them until right before we eat our soup. Okay. We're going to begin with the first telling. There are 4 questions, and there are 4 extended answers that were added over time as the Seder was elongated. The original Seder, they believe, by the way, was just eating Pesach, Matzah, and Moror and singing Hallel at night. That was the original Seder.
Wow.
And so it's pretty interesting. So we are on page 34, beginning with Avadim Hayinu. So when it's when in time to come, your children ask you, what is the meaning of the decrees, the laws, and the rules that Adonai our God has enjoined upon you? You will say to your children, we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and Adonai freed us from Egypt with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Adonai produced before our eyes great and wondrous signs in Egypt against Pharaoh and all his household. And God freed us from there so that God could take us and give us the land that had been promised to our ancestors. Do you want to sing Avadim Hayinu?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Avadim Hayinu, Hayinu, Ata b'nei chorin, b'nei chorin.
Avadim hayinu, Ata b'nei chorin, b'nei chorin. Avadim hayinu, Ata b'nei chorin, b'nei chorin.
Okay, and then there's this really wonderful, in this book, my favorite game called What If? So I want you to ask me these questions. Ask me these and let's see if I know. Let's see if Scott and I can answer. Go for it.
From the very top.
Yeah.
What if God had taken our ancestors out of Egypt, hadn't taken our ancestors out of Egypt? Then we would still be enslaved to Pharaoh in Egypt, along with our children and our children's children.
Yeah.
Okay. What if, even if all of us were wise, all of us discerning, all of us veteran scholars, and all of us knowledgeable in Torah, it would still be a mitzvah for us to retell the story of the Exodus from Egypt? What if the more and the longer one expands and embellishes the story, the more commendable?
So, and what I just want to say is the first one, what if we hadn't been taken out of Egypt? We would be long gone, not because of slavery, but none of those ancient cultures are with us today. we don't have the ancient Egyptians anymore. I mean, there are people who live in Cairo, but like
Right.
they're like driving taxis, right? And they're not, and they have no connection to the
Pharaoh.
Egyptian religion and Pharaoh of old, right?
Right.
So I'd say that's what if one, and I'd say what if two. If we were all veteran scholars, why would then we need to retell this? What do you think?
Well, I asked myself that tonight. Are we really going to do my 57th Seder? I mean, I'm 56 years old, right? So,
Yeah.
And the truth is, already I'm learning new things, even though it's the same story, the same prayers every year. But every year we change. And so that, for me, like, you look at it, it looks different because we are different.
Also, I think when there's something important like this, it's important to retell it every year so that you keep it present and fresh. If you say to yourself, well, I know it, pretty soon you won't. You'll forget, you'll lapse,
Excellent.
Which, by the way, is a wonderful segue into this piece of the first answer, which is the four children. So we're on page 38 in Feast of Freedom, and it's Keneged Arba Banim, in response to the four children. So first of all, we'll begin at the top.
It's a beautiful piece of art right just before.
It
don't you
is,
think? I
yeah.
think it's really pretty. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Baruch HaMakom Baruch Hu, Baruch Shenatan Torah Li'amo Yisrael, Baruch Hu.
And I have a melody for that.
Oh, sing for me.
This is, again, one of these melodies I learned as a boy at a Solomon Schechter day school in Philadelphia. It goes like this. Baruch HaMakom Baruch Hu, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Shenatan Torah Li'amo Yisrael, Baruch HaMakom Baruch Hu, Baruch HaMakom Baruch Hu, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Shenatan Torah Li'amo Yisrael, Baruch Hu. Favorite of the horn section, I like to say.
Yeah. Scotty, do you want to read right here?
Sure.
Scott's going to read in English on page 39.
On page 39, the four children. The Torah alludes to four types of children. One who is wise, and one who is wicked, one who is simple, and one who does not know how to ask. What does the wise child ask? What are the statutes, the laws, and the ordinances which Adonai our God has commanded us? Deuteronomy 6:20. You should inform this child of all the laws of Pesach, including the ruling that nothing should be eaten after the Avikomen.
So that guy, you assume that the tenor of his question, her question, is she's already bought in, and it's like the bar mitzvah kid that you have that like learns all the basic requisites, and they're like, can I learn shacharit?
Right.
You're like,
Right.
Okay, I'll teach you shacharit.
Give him more stuff.
But unpack the wicked child for us, if you would.
Sure. What does the wicked child ask? What does this ritual mean to you? To you and not to him, since he removes himself from the community by denying God's role in the Exodus. Shake him by replying, this is done because of what Adonai did for me when I went out of Mitzrayim. For me, not for him. Had he been there, he would not have been redeemed.
So, and again, I just think this is all spin, because you could also ask that question like this. That's why I don't think wicked, I think wicked is not even, that's the wrong thing. It's really sort of more inquisitive as opposed to, buying it hook, line, and sinker, like, tell me what to learn, I'll learn it, and I want to go on. This guy's, because he could also say, well, what does this ritual mean to you? Like, it might mean something to you different, and it might mean something to you different. And again, the way we're taught to impose is like our subliminal bias. Like we were told that this kid is wicked. Not necessarily, I just want to say. And I think that's really always so important for us to understand, that the wicked, the person that gets cast in that way is my favorite child, because he's asking a complicated question that isn't going to get the same answer every darn time.
But I think it's implying, Rabbi, that this, at least from this Haggadah, that it seems like he or they are asking this question in a very irreverent way, like with a sneer. And even there's still an opportunity to communicate the answer in the way you're saying, but I think they start out with a kind of irreverence. At least that's the tone that's implied here.
And so what if for the smart child you went, what are the statutes and laws and ordinances which Adonai our God has commanded us? Huh?
There you go.
See?
So you could be, okay.
Snippy,
Yeah, you could be.
right?
Yeah.
And then even for the simple child, what does a simple child ask? What is this all about? Is how they want you to read it. And you should tell him, it was with a mighty hand that Adonai took us out of Mitzrayim, out of the house of bondage. But let's read that differently, Mr. I used to do plays in high school. How could you say, what is this all about in a negative way?
What is this all about?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I just want to say, I think there's an issue here.
Well, I kind of like the approach that they take here in kind of creating 4 different perspectives that people might take to the Seder, because they really do describe 4 different types of attitudes that people might have.
It's true.
And one thing interesting, in the first 2 pairings, the wise child, when you think of wise, you think of intelligence. And there's certain intelligence built into this, because they say if he asks, you should explain all the laws of Pesach, even including the ruling that nothing should be eaten after the Avikomen. Well, why do they focus on that? There are so many rules of Pesach. Why do they single that one out? Because in the discussion, I believe it's in the Talmud of Pesach, that's the last thing they discuss, the Avikomen. So it's really saying is you should, if someone's really that inquisitive and curious, A to Z, exactly. That's really the approach
Okay.
in a code.
Makes sense.
So, now in my household, I don't know why, but my brother always used to read The Wicked Guy,
Well, but and then finally, as for the child who does not know how to ask, and by the way, I would say that in any setting that is new to us, we're always that child. Yeah. We don't even know the questions. You should open the discussion for him, as it's written, and you shall explain to your child on that day, it is because of what Adonai did for me when I went free out of Mitzrayim.
The interesting thing, by the way, is there's a progression here. Like you said, when anyone approaches something with complete ignorance, you have to start with the child who doesn't know how to ask. But as they start to learn more, then they can become the simple child. And then they have to make a choice, whether it be the wicked child or whether it be the wise child. Because at that point in time, they'll have enough experience and know-how to decide whether this means something to them or not.
Yeah.
Or a little of both. And I mean, meaning sometimes there are things about Judaism, let's just say, that I take at face value. It's my Judaism, it's what I do.
Right.
There are other things that I've learned or that are considered sacred that really are troubling. And
Right.
and so and that's what I love. So this is probably one of the most iconic pieces of this book is these paper cuts. All the art in Feast of Freedom is paper cuts. And what you can see is that there are 4 different colors, and what's clear is that each individual has a bit of all of these traits within us, and it makes us understand that actually one isn't better or worse. It's really about appreciating the wholeness of these 4 presences, including being rebellious. If everybody bought in hook, line, and sinker, it would be a very there'd be nothing new created, because people would be like, okay, we'll just leave it like it is.
There wouldn't be any arguments in the Talmud, right?
Right. There'd be no arguments in the Talmud. So we are on page 42, Mitchila. Just for fun, when I was little, I don't know if you remember this, Zev, but when I was little, at my Seder, the old guys, my grandpa Barnett, and my father and my uncle Maury and all the men, after one of us said the Manish Tanan, we'd run off and play. They would actually daven this, and they would daven it sort of like in Lernensteiger. So, Mitchila ovdei avodah zara hayu avotenu v'achshav kervanu hamakom lavodato shneimar vayomer Yoshua et kol ha'am ko amar Adonai Elohei Israel. They'd go on. And meanwhile, the ladies were in the kitchen, not very engaging. So you know what I'm saying? But
and my father used to do the same thing, although he used to kind of mumble it to himself. Whenever we're just sitting there as little children or whatever, my mother might have been busy in the kitchen, he'd be like, just like to himself,
Right. So, and I just want to share something with the children. So in this, in a different night, they actually devote about 7 pages to the art of the 4 sons. And you can't see it now, but there's Poland,
I have
1939.
that Haggadah, by the way.
It's really fun,
yeah.
and user friendly. And then this was from the Moss
How long have we
Haggadah.
been
Look at
observing
Yeah.
Passover with a Haggadah, do you think?
that
At
is
least a couple, I mean, for over
probably
1,000
since
years. Yeah.
well, no, I mean yes, but here's the thing: the earliest Haggadah that they found, I think, in the Cairo Geniza was probably, and don't quote me, but from like the 12th or 13th century. And remember, it was only the incredibly wealthy that could pay to have
have a
somebody
book, could have a
scribe
book,
on the book, right?
Yeah.
So that's why you sang Kadesh or Chaz, so you'd know,
remember it.
so you could remember it because nobody, had it. And then there were people who like learned it, from memory, because a lot of this is in the Mishnah. There's already explaining like what the Seder is at the Mishnah. It's changed. The 4 questions have changed because life changed. But
So when the average Jew got to start using Haggadot was probably the 17th century you're talking about? 1600?
Probably sometime after the printing press.
Printing
so,
press.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
yeah.
After the Gutenberg Bible. 1650.
So now we are in the second. This is the second telling, and this is Rav's Pesach story. So the first Pesach story was Avadim Hayinu. Now we're going back to Abraham, right? And which is a different point of start. It says, in the beginning, our ancestors were idol worshipers, but now God has brought us near to serve Adonai. And this actually begins with the story of Abraham. I think it's interesting. It's fascinating that we invoke Abraham. It's what this is like, Zev? It's almost like that same question. Why does the Torah start with creation when really, if we're really thinking about the purpose of Torah, which is how we understand our laws,
Right.
You could begin with Exodus 12, which was just which we read on Shabbat HaChodesh. So, because that says this is the first of the months for you, whatever. And of course, everything has its origins, and we completely have our origins in Abraham.
Right. But more than that, this talks about how our ancestors were idol worshippers, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it's important to reflect upon the fact, even though we're sitting here now in luxury, reclining like we're at a Greek banquet and so on, we have to remember our roots. That's,
Yes.
and we shouldn't be ashamed necessarily of where we came from. In other words, our history emphasizes, where we came from. It doesn't hide. We don't hide from that.
Yes, and you're right. We don't hide from that. And what I think is so beautiful about this telling, is that it actually goes back to the first time we hear when God says to Abraham, before Isaac is born, your descendants are going to number as many as the stars. And by the way, you're going to go down to Egypt and be enslaved for 400 years, whatever. Scotty, would you read this for? Will you read on page 43 for us in the beginning?
Sure. In the beginning, our ancestors served idols, but then God embraced us so that we might serve him. As it is written, and Joshua said to the people, thus says Adonai, God of Israel, long, long ago your ancestors dwelt beyond the river Euphrates, Terah, the father of Abraham and the father of Nahor. They served other gods, but I took your father Abraham from beyond the river, and I led him through all the land of Canaan. I multiplied his descendants. I gave him Isaac, and to Isaac I gave Jacob and Esau, and to Esau I gave Mount Seir as his inheritance. But Jacob and his children went down to Mitzrayim. Praised be he who keeps his promise to Israel. Praised be he who foresaw both our enslavement and our redemption when he made the covenant with our father Abraham, Genesis 15. As it is written, he said unto Avram, know for certain that your offspring shall be strangers in a strange land, and shall be enslaved and afflicted for 400 years. But know with equal certainty that I will judge the nation that enslaved them, and that afterwards they will leave with great substance. Genesis 15, verses 13 to 14.
Which is kind of creepy, because it kind of seems like it was an accident and it all had to do with the famine and Joseph and everything. Okay, but here's the other thing that's fascinating, is that if you do the math, when from the time Jacob and the children go down there for the famine, before Moses comes and liberates them, it's not 400 years. What the people who sort of like do the math of the Torah say, it's 400 years from the moment that God ordains to Avraham that they'll be down here. That's something you can do a little more research on. We are invited to raise our cups of wine. I'm just going to pour myself a little bit here. Actually, you need to pour for me.
Now, I hope you at home are enjoying your vegetables as we do this.
Yes, I'm going to have some celery.
And by the way, it's very important that you don't pour yourself unless you're by yourself, which case you can pretend that you're pouring somebody else. But because we are royalty, other people pour our wine for us, so.
You need more?
I need some more juice. I don't drink wine. So it's okay not to drink wine.
Okay, so we're going to raise our cup of wine, and I'm going to sing a pretty song, one of my favorites. Here we go. We are on the bottom of page 42. Vehi she'amda lavotenu velanu. Vehi she'amda lavotenu velanu. Shelo echad bilvad amad aleinu lechalotenu ela shebechol dor vador omdim aleinu lechalotenu v'hakadosh baruch hu matzilenu miyadam.
But we don't drink.
We don't drink? No, we just lift it. You're exactly.
Can I share with you another melody I know for that?
Oh yeah, totally.
It was like this, it was like this. Another one, favorite of the horn section, as I like to say. Vishamda lavotenu velanu, Vishamda lavotenu velanu, Vishamda lavotenu velanu, Vishamda lavotenu velanu, Shelo echad bilvad, Amad aleinu, Chalotenu, Eila shebechol dor vador, Omdim aleinu, Chalotenu.
Hey!
V'hakadosh baruch hu, v'hakadosh baruch hu, matzilenu miyadam. V'hakadosh baruch hu, v'hakadosh baruch hu, matzilenu miyadam.
By the way, gorgeous. Did you write that?
No, these are all melodies. If I write something, I'll let you know. But
Okay.
These are all melodies that I just picked up in my youth,
Excuse me. I would love you to record them for me because I don't know them and I'd love to learn them.
No problem.
Awesome, I'll pass them on. But it's also interesting. We raised our cup of wine in Thanksgiving because it says, this is the promise that has sustained our ancestors and us. For not just one enemy has risen to destroy us, but in every generation there are those who seek our destruction. Boy, ain't that the truth. Mm-hmm. But the Holy One, praised be He, saves us from their hands.
Amen.
Okay, so now so we're going to unpack this. Torah and Midrash. Tzei Ulmad, Aramiyoved Avi, Vayered Mitzrayma. So again, this is a whole nother take on this. Like, who is the Aramiyoved Avi? So one of the things that we just want to, one of the reasons they think that this is in here, this particular quote from Deuteronomy 26, is because this, in Deuteronomy, it basically says, as Moses is winding up his soliloquy to the people, when you get into the land and you are successful farmers and you have this crop, you are going to take the first fruits of your crop, whether it's your wheat or your trees or whatever, and you are actually going to go to the temple and you're going to say this. And it's sort of like, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. But instead, it's this. My father was a wandering Aramean, and with just a few people, he went down to Mitzrayim and sojourned there. And there he became a great nation, mighty and numerous. The Egyptians dealt harshly with us and oppressed us, and they imposed hard labor upon us. We cried out to Adonai, the God of our ancestors, and Adonai heard our plea and saw our affliction, our misery, and our oppression. Then Adonai took us out of Mitzrayim with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, with awesome power, with signs and wonders. And that's where it ends. Like, why doesn't it say? But the punchline being, so that we could live here in happiness and with all the food that we need and live happily ever after. And that's why we say that. But the fact was, the reason this is in the Haggadah, this was probably the first part of the Magid. Guess why? No Haggadahs, right? Because everyone knew it.
Oh.
You get it?
Yeah.
Everyone knew it.
It was a mnemonic thing.
Well,
So
they knew it from the Torah.
they knew it from the Torah, and that's because they were like, you memorized it.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's move on a little bit. But what you can do, and what we invite you to explore, is how sort of rabbinic exegetical practice is used here. What they do is they take that quote from Deuteronomy and they break it up and they expound on it. So, for example, Arami oved avi vayered Mitzrayma. My father was a wandering Aramean and he went down to Mitzrayim. Well, that could have been anybody. That could have been, first of all, that could have been Abraham because he went down to Egypt. Could have been Isaac. He went down to Egypt. No, Isaac never went down to Egypt.
No.
Isaac did not go down to Egypt, so we know it's not Isaac. But Jacob went down to Egypt. Everybody does their time in Egypt. Let's just say it like that, right? So, and
Sure it is.
and this is referring, and he was impelled by force of the divine word, as it is written. Know for certainty that your offspring will be strangers in a strange land. They will be enslaved and afflicted for 400 years with just a few people. Anyway, it goes on to tell the story of how Jacob went down with his small family. Pharaoh accepted them. They lived happily. They grew into, a nation in their area, and that's what this piece of the telling does, and it's very, very, very interesting. So, and that goes all the way through page 50 up to page 52.
And every Seder, like on the water, this would be the doldrums of the Seder, right? Mm-hmm. Right? It's exciting, you're breaking the matzah, you're doing something, you're dipping this, you're singing. Then you get to this portion of the Seder, and it's like, where'd the wind go? You're just kind of
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
But we're remembering that we started out like just wandering, and then the next thing we know, we're slaves.
Yeah.
And it's bitter slavery, right? It's and I think, if you look, just these headlines, right? Starting on, Adonai heard our plea and saw us. He understood our affliction, our misery, our oppression. I'm just picking up on each of the headlines for each of these paragraphs here. And I think that's the key here is that we were trapped. We were in Mitzrayim. We were in that narrow place. And the only way we were going to get out is when God turned God's attention towards us and started to initiate that process of liberating us.
So, and by the way, what's great about this is that they know that just what you said, it's a kill right here if you're just reading it. So they said that one of the things they recommend is that in this moment we talk about anti-Semitism and prejudice in our time, which, by the way, right now we could spend the whole Seder doing nothing but talking about that, and that basically one of the things they say is you can invite the people at your Seder table to actually tell a story that they were involved in where unjust discrimination, whether as victim, a witness, or a perpetrator, and then how, what's going on and how do these compare to the Egyptian persecution of the Israelites as strangers. By the way, they weren't strangers. They lived there for hundreds of years and they all knew each other. Particularly, and how do you know they all knew each other? Because first of all, the Egyptian midwives, the Hebrew midwives, if Pharaoh is calling up the Hebrew midwives, to come to his palace, they weren't strangers, right? They knew each other. Right. So what does that even mean? I just want to say, what does that even mean? So, okay, so let's keep going. We're gonna, I'm interested in, so this section sort of ends with the plagues, right? Because we're talking about the signs and wonders that God did.
Right.
So here's what I want to say. bottom of 54, Devar Acher uveotot. Elu mitzvot Adonai, shehem ot leolam shehu el matzil Moshiach, v'zikaron bechol dor v'ador, labrit sheben hakadosh baruch hu levein amo, kama shene'emar v'haya lecha la'ot al yadcha, ulezikaron ben einecha lema'an tihiyeh Torat Adonai b'ficha, ki v'yad chazaka hotziacha Adonai mimitzrayim. Another interpretation of what is these signs, it refers to God's commandments. They are the eternal sign that God saves and redeems, and a remembrance for all generations of the covenant between the Holy One and His people. How do we know that? Tefillin. This shall serve as a sign on your hand and as a symbol on your forehead, in order that the teachings of Adonai be in your mouth, that with a mighty hand Adonai freed you from Mitzrayim. And then we get to the next page, and it says, Uvemoftim elu, and with the wonders, elu hamakot, kama shene'emar, v'natati moftim bashamayim v'aretz, dam va'esh v'timrot ashan. And with wonders, this refers to the plagues, as it is written, and I will show you wonders in the heavens and on the earth, blood and fire and columns of smoke. And that's from the prophet Yoel, chapter 3, verse 3.
So was God just showing off here?
Well,
I mean, God could have just freed us, right? But then there are all these signs, and one by one, these plagues, and it becomes a crescendo, it builds, and it becomes so clear to everybody, these signs. And it says in the Haggadah, these are, how did God free us? With an outstretched hand and with signs and wonders. I feel like that's just to demonstrate his power and his might, and because it could have happened we could have just been freed. I mean, God could do anything.
Yes, I think that's true. I think what are your thoughts on this? I mean, just.
Well, it's an interesting take in the story is, as plague by plague, like Scott was saying, God shows his power, the first plague, blood, and Pharaoh's like, okay, no problem. And then he hardens his heart, or he changes his mind, which brings on the second plague. I think volumes could be written about that. Some people argue, is that really fair to Pharaoh, all the suffering that was imposed upon his people, and maybe in his heart he wanted to let the people go.
Absolutely.
You might look at it as, look at it as punishment to the people. Like I said, if they knew each other, that they let this oppression go on, there's some culpability there. And so it's not just snap my fingers, you're gone. What about the responsibility or the such a word, or to the people who allowed the enslavement to go on?
Right.
And maybe these plagues are punishment, to them. Because remember, the plagues never affected the Jews in Goshen. It was only the Egyptians that were suffered by the plagues. So it was definitely punishment. It was definitely punitive. And sometimes when it gets into a matter of free will and so on, but you could always say, look, if they allowed this to go on for 400 years or maybe 200 years, whatever it was, they deserve their just deserts. But at the same time, as the part we're getting to in the Haggadah, we recognize the suffering of the Egyptians and what the regular Egyptian had to go through for our own redemption. And so that's why it's a custom, as we say these plagues, to remove some wine from our Kiddush cup, because wine symbolizes joy in Judaism. And so we remove a little bit of joy, which we'll do in a moment. And it reminds me, there was a movie, getting to sort of cultural references, starring, it was another story on the take of the Exodus, and it was starring the guy who played Batman, the Australian actor. You know what I'm talking about? I wish I should have been more prepared on this. It was kind of a weird movie. Christian Bale played Moses. Okay.
Oh.
Christian Bale played Moses, and but in this movie, it was kind of a weird take. But what they really did well, and I haven't seen in any other movie like the Ten Commandments or any other depiction of the Exodus, is they really did show the suffering of the Egyptian people through the plagues and how it affected them.
Wow.
And so when you saw that visually, like they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words, it really brought to mind this idea of removing the joy from your cup.
By the way, what you're talking about right now makes me think of something that we probably should have said at the outset, but anytime you have a Seder, it is not about our initial redemption from Egypt. It is about the ongoing and endless cycle of oppression that exists, hostility, evil rulers. I mean, all of those. And we're actually living in something right now that's so real. Think about the Russian people. There's a lot of people who are living in Russia who have nothing to do with what the decisions Putin's making. And every single person in that country is feeling the effects, whether they're totally effective or not is another thing, but is completely impacted by the harsh edicts that we have to put on to try to get this guy to pull out of Ukraine, because what he's doing is so wrong, right? And so it's exactly what you just said. I mean, in that respect. And in fact, I was listening to the NPR today, and they were talking about the Boston Marathon, which is coming up, and none of the Russian or Ukrainian runners are going to be able to run.
Not the Ukrainian, the Belarus.
No, the Belarusian, but the Ukrainians can't go either. They just can't get there.
Oh, they can't.
Right? I mean, no one can run. And the Belarusians and the Russians can't run. And one lady who's being interviewed, who's like waited her whole life to run the Boston Marathon and was registered in 20, and of course COVID came, and now is like ready to go and can't go. She said, "Look, they're right. I understand why the United States is doing this. I feel really disappointed, but like our country's doing like a terrible thing." I thought, oh my God, this lady is so enlightened. And I'm thinking that there were probably Egyptians who were like, who cared. And they were like, we got to suck it up.
Yeah. It's funny that like you say, today, right now, as we sit and we present this Seder, the parallel's striking,
Oh yeah.
And and that's why we do it every year.
Right.
And last year, we would not have been having this conversation.
No.
I mean, that's what's so amazing. And that's why we're so happy that you are here with us right now. So Cantor Zev is gonna lead us in the 10 plagues, which by the way, are also referenced in other parts of the Tanakh, and they're a little bit different, just like, different versions of the 10 Commandments. But it says at the top, Eser Makot, Hevi HaKadosh Baruch Hu al Mitzrayim, b'Mitzrayim ve'elu hein. These are the 10 plagues that the Holy One brought upon the Egyptians. And so, do you use your finger or do you pour?
No, I use my finger.
Okay.
So I dip my finger as I say each plague, and I just put a drop of wine in this little cup here.
Okay, we'll repeat after you.
Okay. Dam,
Dam,
Tzfardeya,
Tzfardeya,
Kinim,
Kinim,
Arov,
Arov,
Dever,
Dever,
Shechin,
Shechin,
Barad,
Barad,
Arbe,
Arbe,
Choshech,
Choshech,
Makot Bechorot.
Makat Bechorot.
Then Rabbi Yehuda had notain bahem siman. Rabbi Judah made them into acrostic like this: Ditzach,
Titzach,
Adash,
Adash,
Be'achav.
Be'achav. By the way, Yesher Koach, that the reason they put that acrostic in there is, again, no Haggadah. This was an essential piece of the original telling that got expanded, but they needed Titzach, Adash, Be'achav, because if you're like me, you couldn't remember them unless you had this acronym.
And they wanted to give some a shout out to Rabbi Yehuda even after the Haggadah was printed for what he did for them before,
Exactly, right. So we are going to close this this telling with one of my favorite songs, Scott. And we are on page 60.
Lead us in it.
By the way, have you noticed that what you should watch is that every telling starts off with a problem and sort of ends with a piece of happiness. And that's really what the whole Seder is supposed to be. We begin with the bread of affliction, and by the end, it is the bread of freedom. We begin the evening as slaves. By the end of the evening, when we eat that Avikomen, we are free people, which is really nice. So, Kama ma'alot tovot l'makom aleinu, Ilu ilu hotzianu, hotzianu mi Mitzrayim, hotzianu mi Mitzrayim, dayenu, 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 dayenu. So Scott, how about if you lead us in some of the English? And Zev and I will dayenu you.
You could probably find it in your own Haggadah, but in this one, it's on page 60.
60. You're going to read
61 in English.
Yeah.
How many acts of kindness God has performed for us? Had he taken us out of Mitzrayim without carrying out judgments against the Egyptians?
Dayenu.
Had he carried out judgments against the Egyptians without vanquishing their gods?
Dayenu.
Had he vanquished their gods without dividing the sea for us?
Dayenu.
Had he divided the sea for us without leading us across on dry land?
Dayenu.
Had he led us across on dry land without taking care of us for 40 years in the desert?
Dayenu.
Had he taken care of us for 40 years in the desert without feeding us manna?
Dayenu.
Had he fed us manna without giving us Shabbat?
Dayenu.
Had he given us Shabbat without bringing us to Mount Sinai?
Dayenu.
Had he brought us to Mount Sinai without giving us the Torah?
Dayenu.
Had he given us the Torah without leading us to the land of Israel?
Dayenu.
Had he led us to the land of Israel without building the temple for us?
Dayenu.
Dayenu.
And we can sing the one about the Torah.
Oh yeah, and Shabbat too, I think.
Let's do it.
Ilu natan lanu et ha-Shabbat, natan lanu et ha-Shabbat, dayenu, 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 dayenu. Ilu natan lanu et ha-Torah, natan lanu et ha-Torah, dayenu, 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 dayenu.
A little dayenu story I like to share was once my children were watching TV when they were younger on the Disney Channel, watching some show, I don't know what it was. I walk into the room and all of a sudden I hear someone singing some song in English exactly to this melody. And I know, okay, that writer had to be Jewish, you know.
Absolutely, it's so cute. Okay, so moving right along, so I just want to say there's a whole big thing about the plagues, meaning the plagues don't just, first of all, are there 10, are there 13, are there 16, whatever. But there's this whole big thing about how the 10 plagues become 250 plagues. Do you know that story?
Yeah.
So, and the question is, why 10 aren't enough? Like, I just want to say this always annoys me. I'm just saying I'm annoyed by this piece of the Haggadah. I mean...
Well, I think, again, it goes back to my thought that a lot of this is an opportunity for God to make sure that we know it's God that's freeing us, not Moses, not, we're not running away, but that, we were held in captivity and oppressed until God frees us. And so the plagues are the manifestation of God's might. They are supernatural occurrences. And so it's like, taking 10, maybe 10 doesn't seem like a lot, but 250 seems like more.
Also, I think the fact that they are supernatural, just from a sort of a human perspective, people would expound upon it. Just like if we saw something, a bona fide UFO, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
How much would that story be elaborated upon and upon and upon? You know what I mean?
It's going to spread like...
Yeah, I guess that's true. So interesting. I love that. I just want to show you, this is the picture. This paper cut is of the children of Israel crossing through Yam Suf. And it's so interesting. I was writing about this passage the other day, and it says in Exodus 14, before we read this piece, that God basically was a pillar of cloud behind the Israelites so that when Pharaoh's army came up to the shore, they like couldn't get through the fog. You can just see like the last old guy like crawling on, you know, trying to get out. And then like, and God, the essence of God in the realm of some kind of weather, God is weather, is just, you know, is a really powerful image. And then the army charges through. They should get across with no problem. Once they're all right in the middle, the sea goes back.
It's hard to believe the Egyptian general, after all that, going, okay, let's go, boys. You know?
Exactly.
like this was going to end up okay. You know?
I just got to say, I was flipping around the channels the other night, and I happened to see, you know, the Ten Commandments being shown, and it's just so cheesy. And it kind of ruins the parting of the Red Sea. But I remember when I was a kid watching that on TV and thinking, oh my God, that's the parting of the Red Sea. That's what it looked like. You know, but it's better to imagine it.
And the thing, remember, when we were children, they didn't have DVDs and streaming.
You had to wait for it to come on TV.
You had to wait for it to come, and it was a big deal. Remember, every year around this time of year, the Ten Commandments, Cecil B. DeMille's epic would come on, and it was exciting for us. I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, you guys, so now we're actually in the fourth telling, and they say that this answer was really the original, not the original Magid, but this is as close as we're going to get to answering the four questions. Why tonight do we eat matzah? Why tonight do we eat, you know, regular vegetables and maror, etc. So I just want to say, I'm just reading from a different night. Why these three? The Paschal Lamb, and actually we should show it. So we're going to say, so we have...
This represents the Paschal Lamb here.
Right?
Some people call it the shank bone.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the matzah, which is here.
Oh.
And our maror, which is here. Like we have these bitter herbs, right? And so they constituted the original menu at the first Egyptian Seder. They shall eat meat of the lamb, which we're mandated in Exodus 12, roasted over the fire with matzah and maror. As in a three-act play, Rabban Gamliel identifies these foods with three progressive historical moments in the Exodus. The maror captures the bitterness of enslavement. The Paschal lamb, represented today by a roasted bone, the zeroah, recalls the blood on the doorposts and the terror and the anticipation of the night of the plague of the firstborn. The matzah stands for the following morning when Israel was rushed out of Egypt with no time to let their dough rise.
And I heard an interesting explanation about that. In order for dough to rise, all they had to do was grab just a pinch of yeast, drop it in the dough, okay? Let's think about it realistically. How long does that take? It doesn't take very long at all.
Right.
But the idea that they were in such a hurry, they didn't even want to do that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Really emphasizes how quickly they wanted to get out.
Yeah, they're trying to get out. They were in a hurry.
It wasn't like that to preheat the oven to 350 or anything like that, you know? Yeah.
So we're at the top of page 66. Rabban Gamliel haya omer, kol shelo amar shalosh hadavarim elu, b'Pesach lo yatsa yedei chovato ve'elu hein, Pesach matzah umaror. So those are the three things. Why don't we each take something? You want to start with Pesach?
Yeah, sure, I'll start with Pesach. I'll do this in the English. Pesach. Why did our ancestors eat the Pesach offering at their Seder? As a reminder that the Holy One, praised be He, passed over the Israelite dwellings in Mitzrayim. As it is written, you shall say, it is the Pesach offering to Adonai, because He passed over the houses of the Israelites in Mitzrayim when He smote the Egyptians and spared our homes.
So good. And this is the matzah. Why do we eat it? To remind ourselves that even before the dough of our ancestors had time to rise, the supreme King of Kings, the Holy One, praised be He, revealed Himself and redeemed them, as it is written. And they baked the dough which they had brought from Mitzrayim into unleavened cakes, matzot. It did not rise since they were hurried out of Mitzrayim, and they could not delay, nor had they prepared other provisions for themselves.
Maror. Why do we eat it? To remind ourselves that, as it is written, the Egyptians in Mitzrayim, quote, embittered the lives of our ancestors with hard labor in mortar and in brick, and in every manner of drudgery in the field, and worked them ruthlessly in all their labor. Exodus 1:14.
Yep, that's right. That kind of goes backwards, doesn't it? Though it's interesting. We
Right.
end with the slavery as opposed to they didn't have time to let the dough rise. So it's kind of interesting.
Well, maybe it's because when they made well, no, that wouldn't make any sense. I was going to say maybe when they made the sandwich, they had the meat, then the horseradish, and then the bread, but it doesn't go that way. It goes the meat, then the bread, then the horseradish. So, yeah, it is backwards. Interesting.
And then we get into this really fascinating thing, because by the time you're at Pesach Matzah Maror, you already can start to feel like you're walking through the Seder, like you've achieved something. You're remembering what was, but you're in a different place now.
Right.
And so then when we get into this in every generation, it says, B'chol dor v'dor chayav adam lerot et atzmo ki'ilu hi yatsa miMitzrayim. That is the whole gist of this Seder. We're not doing it because of what happened
Right.
how many thousands of years ago. We're doing it because we were there. We were at Sinai. We were slaves, and we need to be liberated now. In every generation, one is obligated to see himself or herself as one who personally went out from Egypt, just as it says, you shall tell your child on that very day, it is because of this that God did for me when I went out of Egypt. Not only were our ancestors redeemed by the Holy One, but even we were redeemed with them, just as it says, God took us out from there in order to bring us and to give us the land that God swore to our ancestors. I'd love to know just sort of what you think about that. To me, that's like the most powerful thing in Judaism.
Well, I think it's really important, at least from my perspective, for me to remember that in so many ways, first of all, the world is so full of oppression. And even though I personally, in my own personal life, may be as free as they come, living here in the United States of America, but in the 21st century, but that's not the case for, the majority of the world's population. And so, it's really important for us to remember that the world is not free, it's still broken, there's still oppression, and I think and secondly, in many ways in our own lives, even with all of that freedom, we still, each and every one of us, experience some parts of our lives where we're not yet fully realized as human beings, where we're still struggling to overcome some kind of a barrier in our own lives, some kind of a Mitzrayim in our own personal lives. I mean, every human being experiences that.
Yeah. And when you can say that with feeling, like, yes, it was me, I was there,
Right.
and I am sitting at this Seder now, that's when you're ready to sing Hallel. And that's what it is right now. And there was a big machloket, I forget which, maybe it was Rav and Shmuel, or it was probably Hillel and Shammai. It was Hillel and Shammai. Like, how much Hallel do you sing, at least before you eat? Because the Shulchan Orech, the meal, that's really how you know you're a free person. You're sitting, you're eating this feast, two cooked dishes, my God. Yeah. And then you would think, and then we have more Hallel, right? So basically it was agreed. One guy said just the first just Psalm 113, but Hillel basically said, no, you got to sing B'tzeit Yisrael Mitzrayim, which we'll do in a second. But so I want to invite you.
But isn't this also like, tell me, isn't it unusual to be singing Hallel at night?
Unheard of.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the only time, right?
So we're going to actually do a little of Psalm 113, which is, first of all, we have to lift up the second cup of wine, which we have not. This is the second time we're lifting it up, and say, Lefichach anachnu chayavim lahodot, lehalel, leshabech, lefa'er, leromem, lahader, levarech la'alei, ulekales, lemi, she'asa la'avotenu v'lanu, v'et kol anisim ha'eleh. Hotzianu, me'avdut lecherut, me'agon lesimcha, me'evel liyom tov, u'me'afela la'or gadol, u'mishibud ligeula, v'nomar lefanav shira chadasha, hallelujah.
V'nomar lefanav shira chadasha, v'nomar lefanav shira chadasha, v'nomar lefanav shira chadasha, v'nomar lefanav shira chadasha. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, Avdei Adonai, hallelujah, Shem Adonai. Yishem Adonai mevarach me'atavi ad olam, mimizrach shemesh ad mevo'o mehulal Shem Adonai. Ram al kol goyim Adonai al hashamayim kivodo. Mi kadonai Eloheinu, hamagbihi lashavet, hamashpili lirot bashamayim uvaretz, mikimi me'afar dal, me'ashpot yarim evyon, lehoshivim nidivim im nidivei amo, moshivi akeret habayit, hem habanim semecha, hallelujah. Okay, Zev, you want to lead us in B'tzeit Yisrael, page 70.
B'tzeit Yisrael, mi Mitzrayim, Beit Yaakov, me'am lo'ez, Hayda Yehuda lekodsho, Yisrael, mamshelotav, Hayam rav, Hayanos, Hayarden Yisov le'achor, Ha'arim rakeducherim, Gevod givnei tzon, Malechaya, Kidanu, Hayarden, Tisov le'achor, Ha'arim, Tirkiduchelim, Givnei tzon, milifnei Adon, Chuli Yared, milifnei Elohai Yaakov, Ahofti hatzon, Agamayim, Chalamish, Leman yomayim. Baruch atah Adonai, lift your second cup, please. Eloheinu melech haolam asher ge'alanu ve'ga'al et avotenu mimitzrayim, v'higianu la'layla hazeh le'echol bo matzah u'maror. Kain, Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu, yagi'enu lemoadim v'liraglim acherim haba'im, likratenu l'shalom, smechim b'vinyan irecha, v'sasim ba'avodatecha, v'nodelecha shir chadash al geulatenu, v'al pedut nafshenu.
Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael.
Amen.
You want to lead us in the bracha?
Let's do this together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
I'm leaning. That was the second cup. Yum. You're getting a little schnockered here. Well, you're not going to believe it, but it's time.
Time to move to the next part of the Seder.
Oh, yes, it is. So, Scotty, you want to lead us in a
Kadesh?
update yet?
Should we wash our hands?
No, first
No,
we
we're
have
going to
to
sing the
it.
table of contents. Get
Dude, we have
to
to
the
sing
next
it.
spot.
I need them. I don't know it by heart.
Oh, man, are you kidding? Here.
Kadesh Orchatz.
Karpas yachatz, magir rachza. What good
So what do we
timing.
do here?
I'm going to pour.
Rachza means
This is washing from rachatz.
this time we actually do say a blessing.
Right, we're going to say the blessing like we would before we eat bread. And so typically we're supposed to be silent between the blessing and the actual saying of the blessing for the bread.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Never mind. Can you put that under the table?
I think that's the hardest part of the Seder, the silence. Especially when you have a lot of people at your home, right? If you're actually washing the hands of like 12 people, and
Let's say
you're number one and you've got to be silent until you
Here,
get to
take-
number
no, no,
12,
no.
that takes a lot of patience.
We'll say the bracha together. Wait for us.
Okay. Thank you. Here, let me help you. There you go. Feels good, doesn't it?
Together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al netilat yadayim. Kadesh urchatz karpas yachatz magid rochza motzi matzah. Okay. Hineni muchan mezuman, hineni muchan mezuman, hineni muchan mezuman, lekayem mitzvah achilat matzah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu al achilat matzah.
Amen.
Oh, wow.
Good. You know, on the 8th day of Pesach, you might be sick of matzah, but on your first taste, it's actually a welcome taste.
Yeah. I'm getting excited. Really excited. Okay. Will you lead us up to Maror?
It was like this. Kadesh orchatz karpas yachatz magid rachza motzi matzah maror.
Oh, yeah. Now, so do you want, so
Why are we
we have a bracha before we do it, so we're going to do Maror. Wait. So Zev is going to lead us in the blessing.
Okay. The bracha?
Yeah, the bracha. We are on page 74.
Now, what we're supposed to do, I'm gonna,
First, you just do Maror.
oh, Dumara?
Yeah.
Okay, this says dip some Mara. Okay.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
No.
No, but
I think.
Well, you know what? I'm of your tradition. Yeah, just now. What do we have here? This is all right.
yes.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat maror.
Amen.
It seems like the Haggadah is kind of unclear.
All right.
Everyone loves to challenge themselves on how much maror they can eat at the Seder, right? Oh, this is lightweight. Oh, this is super strong. This is nuclear. You ever notice that? It's
Yeah.
like a point of pride.
Okay.
The root, yeah. You take the root, you blend it up. Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. So here's the thing. Now we're going to do korech, which is a little bit of like a weird thing.
This always frustrates me. I'll tell you why later after you finish.
But would you read this, honey, right here, leader, and then I'll lead the song up to that.
We have just eaten matzah and maror separately. However, in the days of the temple, Hillel, the head of the Sanhedrin, used to bind into one sandwich Pesach lamb, matzah, and maror. He ate them all together in order to observe the law. You shall eat it, the Pesach sacrifice, on matzah and maror. Eating the sandwich tonight reminds us of the way of life, the way life combines moments of suffering, maror, and of relief, matzah, enslavement, and freedom.
Well, then where does charosis come into the whole damn thing?
I don't see it here.
Do you know anything? What did your dad teach you about charosis?
Well, I mean, just a traditional, it represents the, the mortar that the Jewish people would make, to create the bricks.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because, I mean, this is pure speculation, but it could go back to the fact that you have children at the Seder, and this is delicious.
Yeah.
And, at my Seder, we had a tradition of serving eggs in salt water. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that's not too sweet. Then you've got the maror. The matzah tastes like cardboard to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But then there's that charoset. And it's just like,
It's fun.
it's wonderful.
It makes worth staying around for. It's true.
Exactly.
Good point. Here we go.
And I like the Sephardi version because it's sweet with the dates in there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I know a lot. This is sort of new to me, but I know people in my congregation, and they know who they are, that would make 26 varieties of charoset.
Wow.
It's like, basically the same sort of base, but then they'd add all these different things to it. And
Yum.
I never thought about that, but it's a wonderful thing. It's almost like a cereal bar for charoset.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, here we go.
So should we make
Kadesh Urchatz Karpas Yachatz Magid Rochza Mosi Matzah Maror Korech.
That's what we're doing? But what bothers me about this is that we never say a blessing. You just eat it.
Well, maybe because it doesn't, the charoset, I don't know where it came from, but it doesn't symbolize, it's not represented sort of like as Pesach, matzah, maror.
Okay.
It's just something that
We
symbolizes.
just added it there over the years.
Yeah, so there's not really a special blessing for it. But
So
it tastes
you make
good.
yourself a little maror and a little matzah and a little
Yeah.
roset. Can you pass the roset, please?
Oh,
All right.
I need a little maror on that. Can I pass some maror,
Okay,
please?
here you go.
Maror.
Pass it all around.
Oh, my word.
Yeah. Now, it's hard to believe that Hillel
Passover's
was the first guy to put together a piece of matzah, a piece of lamb, and some charoset,
Yeah.
or some maror. It's been sitting there in front of them for centuries. But
Yeah. They couldn't have a cheeseburger, so they were like, let's put this guy, let's make this.
yeah, exactly.
So I think we need to sing up to, listen, we hope you've had a great Seder. We've loved being with you. And by the way, after Passover, we'd love to hear some of the things you thought about at your own Seders. Share with us. We're going to sing up to the Shulchan Orech, the great meal. And then we're going to come back. Afterwards, we can do Birkat HaMazon.
Finish up the Seder, yeah. Want me to do it? Kadesh Orchatz Karpas Yachatz Magid Rachza Motzi Matzah Maror Korech Shulchan Orech. Hear the melody. It's getting close. It's getting close to resolution. Yeah.
Te'avon, everybody.
Enjoy your meal.
Enjoy your meal. Well, I found the Avikomen. Actually, we both did together. But we can't.
Congratulations, because I thought I hit it really well.
First of all, he hit it so well, we didn't even know he hit it. We would have been looking forward to going, hey, what happened to this thing?
You knew it. You could see me hiding it, didn't you?
That was impressive.
Right?
I feel like you're
were in
Mr.
on-
Roger.
So you at home might have seen him get up and hide it, but we were clueless.
Yeah, like you guys were singing, and I was like all the way over there.
Yeah,
Anyway,
no idea.
well, you found it. So can I have it back, please?
No, you have to. What do you want? Oh, wait, you can't have it. You can't
Why
finish.
not?
We're not going to finish
We
the
cannot
Seder.
finish the Seder unless I get that back.
Yeah.
We need to eat the Avikomen to finish
I
the
know.
Seder.
So are you going to give it back to me? Or
No.
Let us eat it?
You're going to have to do something for it.
What do I have to do? How about I clean the table up afterwards? I'll tell you what. You can stand and open the door and let Elijah in. Is that a treat for you?
Yeah.
You know?
That's good enough for me.
Okay.
I'll let you guys settle it.
Okay, here
There
we
you
go.
go. So at the Seder, it's a tradition to hide the Avikomen, and then the kids or the guests can try to look for it, and that's what happens. If they can't find it, then the guests are, then they owe something to the person who hid it. But if they do find it, they have to ransom it. The person who hid it has to ransom it from them. And it's important to eat the Avikomen because that's technically the dessert. I don't know if it's low cal, but it's probably sugar-free, you know.
Right.
I used to, there's a little machloket in my family. Can you have dessert after you have your Avikomen? And I think the answer is no.
You're not supposed to eat after. The Avikomen is supposed to be eaten by midnight.
So make sure you eat all your desserts. All those Passover desserts that are designed to taste like it's not Passover,
Yeah.
that you spend a lot of time making, eat those first, and then the Avikomen, because then you're done.
And tzafun means hidden. The hiddenness of the Avikomen intimates to us that the miracle of the Exodus was preparation for future acts of redemption, which are still hidden from us. The Exodus from Mitzrayim did not result in a complete salvation. Every generation must contribute towards achievement of the final redemption.
And we need to sing up to tzafun.
Kadesh orchatz karpas yachatz magir rachza motzi matzah maror korech shulchan orech tzafun.
Thank you.
Okay.
Compliments to the baker. Very good.
Okay, now you have to lead us up to Barek, and then we're going to do Birkat Hamazon.
Kadesh orchatz karpas yachatz magin bochsa motzi matzah maror korech shulchan orech tzafun barech.
Right.
And now it says, fill the third cup of wine.
Aha.
I need to get a little more for myself.
Oh, you should go get it for him.
I'll get it for you, Zev.
Well, here,
I got
you can pour it for me. I brought it here.
Oh,
I'm actually doing the wrong thing, but can I pour you some juice? Or
sure.
would you
Pour
like
some juice. I'll
wine?
take some juice. Okay. No. Perfect.
Just make sure that you don't drive home after you had your 4 cups of wine.
Okay. Please join us in this fabulous Birkat Hamazon. And what we're going to do is we will add the insert for Shabbat, and we won't do it twice. Just you would leave that out on Saturday night.
We're going to go to page 88. There's a short version in this Haggadah if you like.
Oh, Zev.
No.
Cantor Zev. We're going to page 88. We're
That way
taking-
we can hit some highlights. And
Well, let's start with Shir HaMalot, though.
Absolutely.
Which is on page 78. Shir HaMalot b'shuv Adonai et shivat Zion hayinu kechomim az yamale tzlopinu u'lshonenu rina az yomru v'agoyim higdil Adonai lasoti melech higdil Adonai lasoti manu hayinu semechim Shuv Adonai et shivitenu ka'afikim ba'negev hazorim bedima berina yiksoru haloch yelechu v'acho nosei meshech hazara yavo verina nosei alumota. Now page 88. Chave Rai Nevarech.
Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach me'atav yad olam.
Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach me'atav yad olam. Birshut Chaverai Nevarech she'achalnu mishalo.
Baruch she'achanu mishalov tuvo chayinu.
Baruch she'achalnu mishalo v'tuvo chayinu. Baruch hu Baruch Shemo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Hazan et haolam kulo v'tuvo b'chesed u'vrachamim. Hu notei lechem lechol basar ki le'olam chasto.
Uduva Gadol. Davi Lachasalanu Ve'ayasalanu Ma'azol Le'olam Ba'ed Ba'avor Shema Gadol Hirazanu Farnes La'akol U'metzid Ma'azol U'metzid Ma'azol Le'chol Briotav Asher Bara Baruch Atah Adonai Hazan et Hakol Nodeh lecha Adonai Eloheinu al shinchata lavotenu Eretz chemda tova urchava Berit v'torah chayim u'mazon Yitbarach shimcha b'fi chol chai tamid le'olam va'ed Kavatu v'yachavta v'savata u've'rachta Et Adonai Elohecha Al ha'aretz hatova asher natan lach Baruch atah Adonai Al ha'aretz v'al ha'mazon On Friday only. Ritzeva hachalitzeinu Adonai Eloheinu b'mitzvotecha V'mitzvat yom ha'shviyah shabbat ha'gadol v'ha'kadosh hazeh Ki yom zeh gadol v'kadoshu lefanecha Lishbot bo v'lanuach bo b'yahavak mitzvat ritzonecha B'irtzoncha hanach lanu Adonai Eloheinu shalot tehet zara v'yagon mi'anacha B'yom menuchatenu Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu Ya'aleh v'yavo v'yagia v'yira'eh v'yizacher v'yipaked v'zichronenu pikto v'zichron avotenu v'zichron Yerushalayim yirecha v'zichron amcha beit Yisrael lefanecha l'tova b'yom chag hamatzot hazeh Zachrenu Adonai Eloheinu bo l'tova Amen.
Ufoktenu bo livracha
Amen.
bo shienu bo l'chaim
Amen.
Rachem Adonai Eloheinu al Yisrael amecha V'al malchut beit David mishichecha U'b'nei Yerushalayim mir HaKodesh b'mira v'yameinu Baruch atah Adonai Boneh v'rachamav Yerushalayim Amen. Turning the page, which is stuck here.
There you go.
Got it. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam HaMelech hatov ha'meitiv lakol Hu heitiv u'meitiv u'yeitiv lanu U'gmalanu u'gmalenu yigmalenu la'ad Chen v'chesed v'rachamim V'yizakenu limod HaMashiach Harachamanu yivarech et kol ha'misubim kan
Amen.
Harachuma, this is for Shabbos only. Harachamanu yanchilenu yom shekolo shabbat u'menucha lechayei ha'olamim. Harachamanu yanchilenu yom shekolo tov.
Amen.
Ma she'achalnu yihiyeh lesava, u'ma she'shatinu yihiyeh lirefuah, u'ma she'hortanu yihiyeh livracha.
כדכתיב, וייתם לפניהם ויאכלו ויוציאו כדבר
אדוני, אדוני עוז
לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. Third cup, we're going to do this. הנני מוכן ומזומן הנני מוכן ומזומן, הנני מוכן ומזומן, לקיים מצוות כל שלישי. כמו שכתוב בתורה, הנני מוכן ומזומן, כמו שכתוב בתורה, הנני מוכן ומזומן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן.
I did. Okay.
Okay.
Well, that was Kos
Shlishi.
Shlishi, the third cup of wine, which means
Okay.
a little,
So I'm going to actually, I feel like we're going to fill Elijah's cup. What I'd like us to do, folks, is let's each take a little bit of our own cups. Because redemption's only going to come if we all participate. So,
Not much, but there you go.
okay, you're going to need to fill your own cup. Okay. I invite you all to rise. And Scotty, you are since you are the youngest at the table, are you,
I'm a little younger, but it's okay.
Since you are the middle one at the table, you get to open the door for Elijah. But I will read this in Hebrew, and then Cantor Zev will read it in English. Shafoch chamadcha el hagoyim asher lo yada'ucha, v'al mamlachot asher b'shimcha lo kara'u, ki achal et Yaakov v'et navehu Hishamu, Shafoch alehem zamecha v'charon apcha yasigem, tirdof ba'af v'tashmidem mitachat shemei Adonai.
Pour out your wrath upon those who do not know you and upon the governments which do not call upon your name, for they have devoured Jacob and laid waste his dwelling place. Pour out your fury upon them, let the fierceness of your anger overtake them. Pursue them in indignation and destroy them from under your heavens.
Behold, before the coming of the great and awesome day of Adonai, I will send Elijah, the prophet Elijah, to you. He will turn the hearts of parents to children and the hearts of children to their parents. The fifth cup of the evening. Okay, do you want to go ahead?
I'll accept the door.
We haven't sung yet.
Oh, I'll wait here.
But Scotty, will you read about Elijah the prophet at the fifth cup of the evening?
Sure. The fifth cup of the evening belongs to Elijah. The first 4 cups represent 4 landmarks on the road to redemption, where God lightened our burdens, removed our burdens, took us out of Mitzrayim, and made us his people. Yet the Bible speaks of a 5th landmark, our resettlement in the land of our ancestors. For centuries, while our land languished in foster care, the 5th cup reminded us of Elijah's promised coming and our promised inheritance. Today, Israel is ours again. A homeless people has been restored to its cherished homeland. Jerusalem, never forgotten in the bleak, black night of exile, is once more our capital, and the cup of Elijah is the cup of redemption, in anticipation of the redemption that will bring enduring peace.
Amen. Eliyahu hanavi, Eliyahu hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu hagiladi, bimhera v'yameinu, yavo eleinu, Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben David, Eliyahu hanavi, Eliyahu hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu hagiladi. May peace come speedily in our days. Scotty, you want to close the door?
One thing, I'm going to take a seat. And I remember learning about Elijah's cup is that there's a debate about how far we go in how far we go in describing the glory of the Exodus. Was it that we were taken out of Egypt, or was that extra step that we were brought into the land of Israel?
Right.
And so there's this debate. And so we have 4 cups to represent these
the steps of getting out of Egypt.
4 expressions and so on. But Eliyahu's cup in the Talmud, whenever there's an argument or a discussion and they don't know the answer yet, they always say when Elijah comes, he'll tell us. He'll be right. You know. So the Kos Eliyahu, the idea that we have this cup because there was that debate, we don't know. Is it leaving Egypt or is it entering Israel? What's the end of the story? You know. Yeah. And so when Elijah comes, he'll answer that question.
Of course, that's right. Teku.
Egypt, when we think of Israel, we can think of formal, of course, the nation of Israel in modern times. We can also think just more generally, I prefer to think more generally about when we reach redemption, when we reach whatever our promised land might be in our own lives completed. And because even though we have the land of Israel as a nation, it's still riven with strife and we have so many conflicts around it, and it's, we continue to struggle. We continue to have our certain kinds of Mitzrayim today.
Also, then think about it just as a matter of history. I mean, I'm sure I speak for you, but when our parents were born, there was no state of Israel. I mean, it was. Think about all those generations before us who celebrated a Seder where there was no state of Israel. And they're talking about redemption and then going into the state of Israel. For them, that's something that just didn't exist anymore.
Exactly.
But for us, it's
a given. We don't even know. And that's how quickly things change.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know life without it.
Right.
It's weird.
And not only that, when we were growing up, I can speak from, I was born, little biography, June 4th, 1967. The day before the Six-Day War.
Oh my gosh, you're kidding.
That's why my middle name is Shalom. By the time of my bris, my circumcision, the war was over, okay? That's the truth. But when I think about it, all the struggles that Israel had, the existential struggles, occurred before I was too old to understand what they were. So even the Yom Kippur War, which was 1973, I was 6 years old, you see? So my perspective on Israel is so much different than that of my father, who was born in 1930. And still remembers walking down the street in New York when the UN, voted for, to create the state of Israel for the partition. He remembers hearing the celebration through the windows that the yeshiva he was walking by or whatever.
Oh my God.
These are memories you don't forget, right?
Right.
So I mean, it's such a different. So that, like I said, every year we do this because it always takes on different meaning. But it's something interesting to think about when you're gathered around the Seder table with the older generation.
Yeah.
Yes.
What a beautiful memory. That might be a nice thing for. If you're joining people for your Seder, to talk about sort of, it's a great opportunity to connect to the promise of Israel, not necessarily the state in its current form, although that certainly is the realization of many great promises as well. But to think about that at your Seder table. We're ready to do some of Hallel. We're almost at the end of our Seder, and how about if I sing up to Hallel? Are you okay?
Do it.
Please.
Kadesh Urchatz Karpas Yachatz Magid Rochza Motzi Matzah Maror Korech Shulchan Orech Tzafun Barech Hallel.
So close.
Okay, how about if we each pick one thing from Hallel that we want to do?
Okay, you go first.
I'd like to do on page 106 my favorite psalm, Adonai Zacharanu. Okay, here we go. Adonai Zacharanu Yevarech, Yevarech et Beit Yisrael, Yevarech et Beit Aharon, Yevarech Yirei Adonai, Hagatanim im Hagedolim, Yosef Adonai Alechem, Alechem bi'abenechem, Beruchim atem l'Adonai, Oseh Shamayim Ba'aretz Shamayim, Shamayim Adonai, V'ha'aretz Natan Livnei Adam, Lo Hametim Ya Hallelujah, Ve'lo Kol Yordei Duma, V'anachnu Nevarech Ya, Me'ata v'yad olam, Me'ata v'yad olam, Hallelujah.
Scott, you have a favorite you want to sing?
I like. I'm looking. Well, how about on page 110 here?
Yeah.
Odu l'Adonai ki tov, ki me'olam hasta.
Okay.
Can you lead us in it? Because I just need someone to
We're
start.
going to do the Debbie Friedman tune. It's really pretty. You can harmonize with me.
Go for it, yeah.
Okay.
Then I know it.
Hodu l'Adonai ki tov, ki le'olam chasdo, ki le'olam chasdo. Yomar na, Yisrael, ki le'olam chasdo, ki le'olam chasdo. chasdo. Yomru na Yirei Adonai. Kilei olam chasdo. Kilei olam chasdo.
And for me, I'm going to turn to page 112, and the second line from the top, Pitchu li sha'arei tzedek, open for me the gates of triumph. This is a melody my father used to sing, which I'm pretty sure he learned from his father. And we'll sing these two lines and then go into the 4 verses below it.
Beautiful.
Pitchu li sha'arei tzedek, avavam oreya, zeh hashar l'Adonai, tzadikim yavolu vo. Odecha ki anitani v'atehi li lishua. Odecha ki anitani v'atehi li lishua. Even masu habonim hayda lerosh bina. Even masu habonim hayda lerosh bina. Me'ed Adonai hayda hi niflad b'einenu. Me'ed Adonai hayda hi niflad b'einenu. Zeh hayom asa Adonai nagila v'nismecha bo. Zeh hayom asa Adonai nagila v'nismecha bo. I love that last line.
Yes.
It's such a wonderful lesson. This is the day Adonai has made. Let us exult and rejoice in it. If you wake up in the morning, take advantage of it.
Absolutely. And then I just will say, just repeat after me because we need it right now. Ana Adonai Hoshiana.
Ana Adonai Hoshiana.
Ana Adonai Hoshiana.
Ana Adonai Hoshiana.
Ana Adonai Hatzlichana.
Ana Adonai Hatzlichana.
Ana Adonai Hatzlichana.
Ana Adonai Hatzlichana.
So we're going to do just a little highlights of Nishmat. So basically what's happened is, that's what you're asking. What do we mean when they say Geula Arichta, like one long redemption? The truth is that every morning we actually relive our redemption in our morning prayers. But the fact that we invite the same morning redemption literature into the Seder at night, and then we're going to do it again in the morning, and then we're going to, because we do 2 Seders, but forget the second Seder if you lived in Israel. That's like the Geula ain't stopping. It's like the 24-hour Geula, the redemption.
I see.
Do you get it?
So we've been free.
Okay. So I want to do this little. Okay. So sing with me. Just repeat after me. Nishmat kochai. We're on 114. Tivarech et shimcha. Nishmat kochai. Tivarech et shimcha. Keep going. Nishmat kochai. Tivarech et shimcha. Sing without me.
Nishmat kochai. Tivarech et shimcha. Nishmat kochai. Tivarech et shimcha. Nishmat kochai. Tivarech et shimcha. Nishmat kochai. Tivarech et shimcha.
And can we just do a little of Dale's Ilufinu? Do you know that one?
Ilufinu.
Yeah, you start. And no, we're going to do a canon. You can do
Here
it,
we go.
Scotty. Go
We
ahead.
sing this in our services in the morning. You should be familiar. Ilufinu mali shira shira kayam.
Ilufinu mali
nakamon amon galav.
Ilufinu male shira, male shira, shira kaya, shonenu ri, inakamu, amon galab, amon galab. Scotty, will you read? This is such beautiful poetry. It's about the song of the sea.
Could song fill our mouths as water fills the sea? Could joy flood our tongue like countless waves? Could our lips utter praise as limitless as the sky? And could our eyes match the splendor of the sun? Could we soar with arms like eagle's wings and run with the gentle grace of swiftest deer? Never could we fully state our gratitude for 1/10,000th of the lasting love, which is your precious blessing, dearest God, granted to our ancestors and us.
Right, and then every morning we say, from Mitzrayim, you redeemed us. I mean, it's everywhere all the time. What I'd love to do, I got some song favorites, Zev. I don't know about you, but
Go for it.
can I introduce? Is it time for cup for number
Not
4?
yet.
No, not
I
yet.
think they do it toward the end of this one.
Somewhere in
In this Haggadah,
there. Okay, it comes after the...
I don't want to forget. By the way, we cannot forget to count the Omer, which we will do.
fourth cup is
yeah.
on 134 in this Haggadah.
Yeah, so we got some singing to do.
Yeah.
So I'll just do a couple of the verses of Kilo Na. So my family was a big singing family. The best part of the Seder was at the end, and everybody was at the table. And we'd have all these contests. Here we go. So we're on 118. Adir bimlucha bachor kalacha Gidu dav yomru lo lecha ulecha lecha ki lecha lecha af lecha donai hamamlacha lai 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 kilo nae kilo yae Dago bimlucha hadur kalacha Vatikav yomru lo lecha ulecha lecha ki lecha lecha af lecha donai hamamlacha lai 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 kilo nae kilo yae. We'll skip to the last verse. Takif bimlucha tomecha lacha timimav yomru lo lecha ulecha lecha ki lecha lecha af lecha donai hamamlacha lai 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 kilo nae kilo yae.
So here's a melody that we would do the same thing at our family. Now the melody you did was nice because you could really wrap your tongue around lecha ulecha. The way I do it, it's a little faster. It goes like this. I'll just do the first verse and the last verse. Adir bimlucha bachor kalacha gedu dav yomru lo. Here's the fun part. Chalacha lecha ki lecha 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 donai mamlacha kilo nae kilo yae. Takif bimlucha tomecha lacha tamivav yomru lo. Chalacha lecha ki lecha 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 donai mamlacha kilo nae kilo yae.
But how
I'll
did
try
people
doing
learn-
that on 3 cups of wine.
But
right?
how did people learn to do that so fast? That's hard.
Practice.
Yeah. You know, this always nowadays it always reminds me sort of like modern music. You know what I mean? Like the rap and hip hop. You know what I'm saying? And the spinning. I love that lyric, but yeah.
I love it.
And by the way, that also helps you get up the matzah out of your throat. You know, that's
Right. So why don't we do, you want to do Adir Hu? By the way, all these songs, all these PUT, which were added much later, really in the Middle Ages, most of them are alphabetic acrostics, beginning with, Aleph, then Bet. But, so we're going to, we can do maybe every other verse of Adir Hu. Just, okay. Give me a key that works for you.
Adir Hu,
Adir Hu,
Yivnei Beito Bekarov, Bimheira, Biyameinu Bekarov, El Bnei Vecha Bekarov, Hador Hu, Vatiku, Zakai Hu, Yivnei Beito Bekarov, Bimheira, Biyameinu Bekarov, El Bnei Vecha Bekarov,
Kabirhu, Lamudhu, Melechu, Yivne Beso Bekarov, Bimheira, Bimheira, Biyameinu Bekarov, El B'nai, B'nai Vecha Bekarov, Podehu, Zadiku, Kadoshu, Yivne Beso Bekarov, Bimheira, Biyameinu Bekarov, El B'nai, B'nai Vecha Bekarov.
Now, I don't know where that melody came from, and maybe someone there does, but I always think of a drinking song. Can you imagine?
Sure.
El B'nai, B'nai Vecha Bekarov.
Absolutely.
Right? That's it.
So just remember, by the way, that we only did every other verse, but just so that we give you a taste, but we want you, of course, to sing the whole song if you can. Echad Miyodea. So this is another, did you have a family favorite for this?
Do you know the Echad Miyodea?
Yeah.
You know that one?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, that's one we usually sing.
So I'll introduce. So this became like the contest. Like this was the do or die song of our Seder. So like there are 40, 50 people there. So we'd all have different tables. And each table would have a verse. And you'd have to when it came to your turn, you'd have to answer the question and everybody else had to respond. So I would go, so the table one would go, Echad Miyodea. And then the tables would go, Echad Ani Yodea. And then everybody, Echad Eloheinu, Sheba Shamayim U'Va'aretz. Next table, Shnai Miyodea. Everybody, Shnai Miyodea. And then the question answer would go, Shnei Luchot Brit. And then table number one would go, Echad Eloheinu, Sheba Shamayim U'Va'aretz. Table number three, Shlosha Miyodea. Everybody, Shlosha Miyodea. Shlosha Avot. Next table, Shnei Luchot Brit. Echad Eloheinu, Sheba Shamayim U'Va'aretz. Let's just do we'll do Shemona.
And how was the rhythm? Was it like right on rhythm?
No,
It was like
it's-
table 6 always lagging. You know?
They're always and it's again, how much wine have you had? So we'll do number 8. Let's do number 8, 10, and then 13. Go.
Okay.
So Shmona Miyodea, and you guys say
Shmona Niyodea.
Shmona Yemei Mila,
Shiva Yemei Shabbata, Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, Chamisha Chumshei Torah, Arba Imahot,
Shlosha Avot, Shnei Luchot Brit, Echad Eloheinu, Sheba Shamayim U'Va'aretz, Asara Miyodea,
Asara Niyodea.
Asara Dibraya, Tisha Yacheleda, Shmona Yemei Mila, Shiva Yemei Shabbata, Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, Chamisha Chumshei Torah, Arba Imahot, Shlosha Avot, Shnei Luchot Brit, Echad Eloheinu, Sheba Shamayim U'Va'aretz.
Can we do 13 in the melody?
Oh yeah, let's see. Here we go.
Let's go. Shlosha Asar Miyodea. Shlosha Asar Miyodea. Shlosha Asar Midaya.
Shnei Matzahs Shivtaya,
Achad Asar Kochvaya.
Asara Dibraya,
Tisha Yacheleda.
Shmona Yemei Mila,
Shiva Yemei Shabta.
Shisha Sidrei Mishnah,
Chamisha Chumshei Torah.
Arba Imahot,
Shlosha Avot.
Shnei Luchot Brit,
Echad Eloheinu, 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 Eloheinu. Sheba Shamayim U'Va'aretz. The funny thing about that melody is you sing Echad, number 1, Eloheinu, and then you sing the word Eloheinu 26 times.
Yeah.
We should have done that more for. Do you want to go back and do some more verses in that? I
No,
love
that's
that.
fine.
I love that one.
That's a fun one. But it's a funny thing. A lot of families do that, where different groups take different numbers, and that's why I asked, does it lag? Because it's very rare that the groups are on rhythm.
Yeah.
It's like it's like Grandpa Maury is always like sleeping at the wheel, and everyone's got to wait for Chamisha Chumshei Torah.
Yeah, exactly. That's right, exactly. Okay, I think we should do all of Chad Gad Yah.
Beautiful,
It's
beautiful.
my favorite. 128, and here's the question: is it a metaphor or not?
It's for sure it's a metaphor.
Okay, I just thought I'd ask.
It's a neat song. People do a lot of fun things with this. Some people make animal sounds or the sounds of the different objects and all kinds of things.
Seriously, one of my great achievements, I'll never forget what 4th grade Hebrew school, Miss Fishman was my teacher. And she was like, we learned a lot, like more than your average prayers. And we all learned all of Chad Gad Yah, and we had to do it like in a play. And that's where I really learned it. So
That's
here we
great.
go. Chad Gad Yah, Chad Gad Yah, Dizavina Babis Rezus, Chad Gad Yah, Chad Gad Yah. V'yata shun raviach lalekad yadizavina ba bisrezus echad gad ya echad gad ya v'yata chal babenashach l'shun radiach lalekad ya dizavina ba bisrezus echad gad ya echad gad ya v'yata chutra v'hika lecha badenashraf l'shunra v'yachal legadya dizavina ba bisrezus echad gadya echad gadya v'yata nura v'sarav l'chutra v'hika lecha ba denashraf l'shunra v'yachal legadya dizavina ba bisrezus echad gadya echad gadya v'yata maya v'chava l'nura v'sarav l'chutra v'hika lecha ba denashraf l'shunra v'yachal legadya dizavina ba bisrezus echad gadya echad gadya v'yata Torah v'shata l'maya t'chava l'nura d'sarav l'chudra d'hika l'chaba d'nashach l'shunra v'yachal legadya dizavina ba bisrezus echad gadya echad gadya v'yata shochet v'shachat l'Torah d'nashkav l'shmaya d'chava l'nura d'sarav l'chudra d'hika l'chaba d'nashach l'shunra v'yachal legadya dizavina ba bisrezus echad gadya echad gadya v'yata malach hamaves Deshachal l'shochet, deshachal l'sora, deshachal l'maya, dechava l'nura, desarav l'chudra, dehika l'chaba, denashach l'shunra, deyachal l'gadya, dezavina ba bisrezus echad gadya, echad gadya, v'yata hakadosh baruch hu, deshachal l'malach hamaves. Deshachal l'shochet, deshachal l'sora, deshachal l'maya, dechava l'nura, desarav l'chudra, dehika l'chaba, denashach l'shunra, deyachal l'gadya, dizavina ba bisrezus echad gadya, echad gadya. Is that thing still on?
Oh, we're rolling.
Is it still rolling? Okay. So, if this is the second night and you're with us for the second Seder, it is time for us to count the Omer, because we're going to begin our 50 days leading up to Shavuos. And so we invite you to rise. And, oh, did we ever do the fourth cup? Not yet.
Not
We're
yet.
going to do it in a second.
Coming up.
But we only
Coming up.
do this on the second night,
Here we go.
not on the first night.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat ha'omer hayom yom echad la'omer. Today is the first day of the Omer. Zev, would you read the beautiful reflection?
Sure. Master of the universe, you commanded us to count the Omer, as you have written in your Torah, from the eve of the second day of Pesach, when an Omer of grain is to be brought as an offering, you shall count 7 complete weeks. The day after the 7th week of your counting will make 50 days. Adonai, our God and God of our ancestors, may it be counted in my favor that I have dutifully counted the Omer today, and may I thereby make amends for any harm that I may have done, and may I be purified and sanctified in the holiness of heaven. Amen.
Amen. So now we're getting ready for the very last piece of the Seder, the fourth cup.
Can someone please pour me some
Oh, yes,
juice?
indeedy do.
Thank you.
Yes, indeedy do. Scotty, you pour for Zev. Pour a little more in my cup.
Thank
A
you.
little bit here.
There you go.
Slap it. Okay. So now nirtzah comes from the Hebrew word rotzeh, to want. We long for, we want. And so it says, we're gonna sing up to this point in a moment, but the Pesach Seder ends with a prayer that all our efforts to perform the Seder properly are pleasing and acceptable to God. And this was composed, this prayer was composed by Rabbi Yosef Tov Elem in 11th century France. We also look forward to next year's Seder. Hopefully we will celebrate it in a more peaceful world and in a fully restored Jerusalem. We conclude with next year in Yerushalayim. And so before we do the cup of wine.
We're on page 134 in
We do we got a cup of wine. Okay.
our Haggadah here.
Okay, so let's sing the song. Zev, you want to lead us in Your Beautiful?
Sure. Hineni muchad mzuma.
No, we have to sing Nirtzah, like Kadesh Orchatz.
Oh, Kadesh Orchatz Garbas Yachatz Magid Rachza Motzi Matzah Maror Korech Shulchan Orech Tavun Barech Halel Nirtzah. Completion. Now, Hineni muchad mzumad, hineni muchad mzumad, hineni muchad mzumad, lekayim mitzvot kos revi'i. Kemo shekatu b'Torah, hineni muchad mzumad, kemo shekatu b'Torah, hineni muchad mzumad.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
And then what's at the bottom of 134 is the bracha that you would say after, because we've already done Birkat Hamazon, but because we just had one of the key foods, wine, wheat, whatever, we'd have to do bracha ha'achrona. That's what's there. And then there's this beautiful, beautiful closing prayer. Scott, why don't you lead us on page 137? Our Seder now has ended.
Our Seder has now ended. With its history-laden rites, we have journeyed from Mitzrayim on this storied night of nights. We bore witness, we remembered our covenant with you. So we pray that you redeem us as you pledged your word to do. Next year in Jerusalem, Lishana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim.
Lishana Haba'a, Lishana Haba'a, Lishana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim. Lishana Haba'a, Lishana Haba'a, Lishana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim. Lishana Haba'a, Lishana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim. Lishana Haba'a, Lishana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim. Well,
that was wonderful.
Really fun. Thank you.
Thank you,
Chag
Rabbi
Sameach.
Tolchen. Thank you, Scott, for your participation.
Andrew Zev and Rabbi
And who's behind the camera? Let's thank our good friend.
Colleen Veras, thank you very much for making this happen. We hope you enjoyed this Seder. Have a wonderful Pesach. Enjoy it with family and in good health. And next year, all together, right?
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.